Hello! Before we get into the video, I wanted to let you know that I launched my undated bullet journal. This is a full bujo with pre-designed spreads, so you don't have to spend time making art, and instead can just customize this journal for yourself. It's also undated, so you can start it whenever you want, or skip a month. If you're interested, I'll have the link below to my online shop. Okay, love you, hope you enjoy the video. Hello my loves, welcome to my January 2024 bullet journal setup. When I tell you, for some reason January has got to be the worst month to come up with bullet journal ideas for, because I was sitting there for like 48 hours before filming, going through a bajillion different theme ideas, and I couldn't think of something that I wanted to do. I filmed this on Saturday, December 23rd, so I couldn't push back the date at all because you guys are watching this on Wednesday, and of course Christmas meant that I had to get this done before the holidays, and I literally drew out all of these theme ideas about 20 minutes before I started filming. Like, I had so many theme ideas that I was debating for like days beforehand, and I was stressing so much because I didn't know what to do. I mean, for one, it was stressful because it's the first bullet journal theme in my new journal for 2024, so obviously I wanted to make it a good theme and start the year off right. And also, I'm gonna talk about this a little later in the video, but I'm actually making downloadable printables for this bullet journal theme. Yes, you heard me right. You will be able to download the art and spreads from this theme onto your own computer. So I can talk about this a little later, but because I'm doing download printables for the first time, I wanted to make sure it was a theme idea that I actually, really liked, and I wanted to have you guys be able to use. So with both of those factors in mind, and also the fact that January is just a super hard month to come up with themes for, in my opinion, because last month for December, I did a wintry theme. So I didn't want to do two wintry themes back to back, and January, basically all that happens is New Year's and winter. So I went through lots of different themes. I thought, I'll give you the list. I thought a carnival theme, deck of cards could be fun, but I didn't want to do too much gold because I did that in my earlier setup, like literally last week for my new 2024 bullet journal. By the way, that video will be linked down below if you're interested in checking it out. It's a super fun one. I love how that setup turned out in my new journal. I also thought about a chess idea, possibly trains, disco balls, and even old school like drawings in a notebook and school notes, stuff like that. But although I literally sketched out about 2 themes and erased them before filming this, like I said, it was the day of filming that I decided to stick with whales underwater, and this is what I'm painting here before you. Shout out to my bestie Olivia on Instagram. I put a little theme ideas like question box on my Instagram story asking if anyone had any ideas they wanted to give me, and as I was literally talking to my sister that morning thinking about theme ideas, I debated like underwater whales or some kind of underwater image, and then I looked at the Instagram question box and Olivia had literally sent that exact same thing, so we were literally thinking on the same wavelength, and shout out to her. But this is the theme I decided to go with for January, and I'm actually like legitimately shocked at how it turned out when I tell you that I did not expect this theme to turn out very well because it was super last minute, super rushed, super stressful. But I actually really love how this turned out, and I can't wait to show you guys the finished product. So I'm already halfway done with this painting, but like I said, painting is crazy. I am usually not a painter. However, I decided that since I am doing an underwater water theme, maybe the good idea would be to use watercolor for this art medium. So I have this huge piece of sticker paper that I am coloring on top of with watercolor, and I'll talk more about my technique a little later in this video. However, I don't want to talk about the paper first because my debate was first in between using sticker paper or using like cardstock or watercolor paper. Obviously the cardstock and watercolor paper would be a little thicker, so I wouldn't have to worry about like warping so much in the paper, because obviously I'm using a lot of water to like blend out the colors and make this ombre of light effect underwater. So I wanted to make sure that the paper wouldn't actually like warp and bend and ripple as I was adding sorts of water in it. However, that paper, cardstock and watercolor paper is a lot thicker, and I already knew that I was going to be quite a bulky setup with multiple pages being pasted in, so I decided to go with sticker paper instead. That way it'd be a lot easier and thinner to just rip off the back and quickly adhere into my journal spreads. Like I said, the paper did warp a little bit because it isn't actually meant to be used with watercolor. However, I still use this. It wasn't really too big of a deal. When I paste it in a few minutes, you'll just see that I just tried to press the paper as flat as I could, and it turned out pretty well. And after like a day or so of the journal being flat closed, none of the papers are warping anymore. It's perfectly fine. The watercolor set that I'm using for this painting is from Mailang Watercolor. I'll have it linked down below. This video is not sponsored at all, but I have worked with them in the past, and I really do like their product. The palette has multiple different, like, I don't know, 30 to 40 different watercolor pigments in it, so it's really nice. There are also some metallic ones if you're interested in that, although I don't use the metallic ones very often. However, my favorite part about it is that the actual pen itself is a watercolor pen, so it's like you don't need a bajillion different brushes. The brush itself has a little bit of water in like a container, so when you tip the brush down, the water flows into the tip tip of the brush. And so it means you don't even have to get like a cup of water and different brushes to paint with. You can just use the same pen that they already give you in the set, wipe it off when you need to change a different color, and it literally makes the process so much easier. It's such a simple step for me, just getting a cup of water, but when I tell you it makes such a huge difference into me wanting to actually paint, it truly does. I'm not usually a painter person, but like I said, I felt like this theme called for it. Making this effect with like the really, really light water and like the sun shining through would be so hard to do with marker, because even if I used alcohol marker, it would not get nearly as good of a blend as if I did watercolor marker. Also, because I'm doing this on sticker paper, which isn't actually meant for paint, the blend is not perfect, not a amazing ombre gradient. And also there are definitely parts of the painting that are very patchy, and it's just really imperfect. But it's worse in person. But even so, I don't mind the little inconsistencies and discrepancies. I feel like it gives the painting character, and from far away it still looks like pretty good. Like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm actually so proud of myself because I'm not usually a painter, so putting myself out of my comfort zone last minute like this was kind of crazy. But I'm glad that it turned out well enough for me to actually use in my bullet journal and start off 2024 right with a nice bullet journal theme. So I basically just cut out around the picture and pasted it on the right, and that was my entire cover page. I wrote January on it with a white gel pen. However, I also added a black drop shadow to the lettering, and I think I may just like go over that with the white again. I don't love the drop shadow effect, but I wanted to make it stand out from the background a little more. On the left, as you can see, I have this very tall calendar, very, very simple. I am going back to school this month, but I have a couple weeks of break before I do, so I really don't need that much calendar space because the few weeks that I have still on break are going to be quite, simple, not too much going on. The last thing here is I wrote on a piece of sticker paper with the same alcohol marker that I used to color in the fish and the person on the right. I did it with alcohol markers because it would stand out more and be more pigmented, so I used that same color to just draw in a rectangle that I then cut and pasted out. That way I could draw on top of it with white gel pen to write Monday through Sunday at the top of the calendar, and then of course adding my little bubbles and dots everywhere, and that is the end of this cover page. Okay, so moving on to the next spread. Well, actually not, because I do have 2 more paintings that I'm going to do for the rest of this setup that I wanted to do at once. Once I had done the first big painting, I kind of got the groove of what style I wanted to do, and so it just made it easier to do the last 2 simultaneously instead of having to wait to do one by one. So now I want to talk like my little process start to finish for each of these drawings, and also the same thing for the cover page. So first I used my Ohuhu fine liner in size 03 to go over all of the line art here. It's not too much line art, but it's enough to kind of differentiate all the shapes from each other, and the line art does show through after the paint because it is watercolor. It's not like acrylic paint, so I wanted to make sure I had all of my shapes very, prominent. I guess that's not really a good word, but whatever, you get what I'm saying. I used many reference pictures online of pictures of whales and positions to get them in the right shapes and positions. I'm sure they're not actually like anatomically correct, and also like proportionately. There is, like I said, a girl on the front cover, and there's also a girl in the boat reaching out to touch the whale here, and they are not perfectly sized at all. I'm sure the whale in real life would be so much bigger compared, but you know what? It's fine. It works for my purposes here. And I love like the calm and serene but powerful vibes that whales have, which is why I think I kind of like it for January. For some reason, January is like an intimidating month for me. Like I said earlier, it's just like I never know what to do. There's no theme that seems to fit perfectly, but like whales feel like January to me, especially since it's like the Arctic water. It's still cold, but it's calm. For some reason, that gives January vibes. So this is why I decided to do whales here, and I think it really matches with January. Of course, I got off topic, so back to the painting. Basically, I used 3 different colors of blue. One light blue, one dark blue, and then one more grayish blue that was also pretty dark. So I took the paint off of the actual palette and just mixed it on the side to add more water to it to dilute the color, and so that's how I made the very, very light swashes of blue at the top of the bottom painting, and as the light's coming down from the top painting. And then I used lighter swashes of the medium dark blue as well to kind of add shadows coming outwards, and then I used the raw pigments without extra water mixed in to add the darkest shades under the rocks and on the corners and bottom of the paintings. This ombre was relatively easy to do. I mean, actually it's a lie because it wasn't sticker paper, so the paint itself dried very quickly, so I really had to work quickly and not let it dry, and I feel like this would be a lot easier if I used actual watercolor paper, but like I said, I used sticker paper just would be easier to paste into my journal. Anyway, all that being said is I had to really work with a lot of water and keep like blending and adding color and building color up, especially on the corners and edges where I wanted it to be really dark. My idea for the cover page and the one on the top is that there's like beams of light from the sun shining through the water, which is why there's this like patch that's like lighter than the outsides. And then on the bottom image, it's just that like the water closer to the surface would be a lot lighter than the ones darker. So that's why this ombre is positioned how it is, and also how it was on the cover page. For the whale, the boat, and the rocks in the corner, I used the same like grayish type of blue. I wanted to differentiate it from the actual water, the way it stood out, but also give the same ombre effect. So as you can see on the top painting, the whale is lightest on its back, partially because that's like how most whales are actually drawn, but also because if there was light shining above, then that's where it would hit the whale, so it'd be lighter there. I did the same technique of diluting the paint with water first to get a lighter swash, and then going in afterwards with the rock pigment for a darker color in the shadows, and I basically use the same technique for both whales, the boat, and the rocks, etc. Then after the paint is dry, I went in with an alcohol marker. This one's from Hoo. I actually used 2 depending on like with the darkness levels. I'll put both the numbers here on the screen, and that was just to kind of add more darker little details, color in the fish, the bubbles, and like the dots on the whale, the eyeball, the person, and their clothes, etc. I did most of those with markers just because it's a little easier to control than paint. And then afterwards I went in with a white gel pen to add extra dots, sparkles, highlights, you know, dots to the whale, that kind of thing, to make the painting really pop and it seems like sparkly and magical, which is my favorite thing to do in any of my art pieces. Before we get to the next part of this video, I want to let you guys know that I'm actually going to be selling all of my artwork and spreads in this setup as printables on my online shop. This is something I've been thinking about for a while but have never done before, but I feel like 2024 is the year to start doing this occasionally. So all of these spreads will be available for digital download in line art form on my shop. So if you want to download this and use it for yourself, check out the link in my description below and you guys can twin with me for your bullet journal themes. Alright, so 10 minutes in and I'm happy to say that we can finally call it quits on the painting for this video, and now we're just going to talk about the spreads in my bullet journal. So the bottom picture that I had like one really long strip is actually going to cover 2 different spreads in my bullet journal. So I just cut it in the middle, and then I was actually going to have it like completely touch the edges of the journal, but because the paper was just too skinny, like too short, it didn't quite reach there, so I just cut it so that it fit right in the dot grid area. So there's a little bit of border on the sides of each painting, but that's perfectly fine. I feel like the effect is still there. Just like a continuous painting across both pages, and then there's like the boat and moon on the bottom left corner of the left page here. So like I said, the paper itself wrinkled a teensy bit, but I just had to like smooth it out a little bit and make sure that it laid flat and stuck flat. And even if the bullet journal paper itself may curve a teensy little bit because the sticker paper wants to curve, once you like let the bullet journal sit and like close it for about 24 hours, you know, maybe overnight as you sleep, you'll wake up and the journal is perfectly fine. It doesn't have like little bends in the paper. It's just perfectly flat and just like you want it. On the right here I have my habit tracker, and I'm going to be tracking 9 habits this month. Usually I do around 6, but I decided to do 9, mostly for aesthetic purposes because I wanted to fill this spread, and so I feel like 6 wouldn't have actually filled it properly, but I can think of definitely 9 habits I need to work on this month. Especially since it's January, it's the month of resolutions, and I feel like this is where a lot of habits get, you know, started and then left, but hopefully I'll be able to stick to them. On the left, I'm gonna have a very big goals page. So usually I just do like a very small box on the side of a calendar just to list a couple goals for January. Now I am gonna do a full goal setting and planning video in a couple weeks, so you guys will be able to see my process for setting goals for myself for the entire year of 2024. But since it is January, it's the first month, I want to make sure I'm starting it off right. So I have a big box in the top right corner, which is going to be my focus for the month. Maybe a sentence or 2 just to like talk about what I want to really work on and like focus on for the next 30 days. Well, okay, 31 days. And then at the bottom I have a column, or 2 columns. So on the left is my main goals. Those are basically going to come directly from my 2024 goals. Like what do I want to specifically work on this month that will contribute to the yearly progress, my yearly goals. And then on the right, I'm going to have a to-do list. Any to-dos that I need to get done, but don't necessarily fit into like one specific week will go here. And then throughout the month of January, I'll just make sure to reference back and complete them as the month goes on. Color-wise, I'm using a couple different Tombow brush pens, and also I think a Crayola Super Tip for the art in here. I'm using the same like grayish blue that I used in my December theme. Ironically, that's what like all the headers of the habit tracker and like part of this plaid thing is. It's a really nice marker. I love the color, and I think it works really well and matches with the grayish tones of the whales. And then I also use a slightly lighter blue to add some more plaid in that little focus box. And then I'm doing the same technique as I did for the calendar page, where I cut out a little piece of sticker paper and drew on it with alcohol markers, and then I'm going to go on top of it with a white gel pen to write the focus. This works well because white gel pen seems to always show up very opaquely on top of alcohol markers, where it doesn't usually on water-based markers. So I feel like using sticker paper just to have the little alcohol-based marker section right there works pretty great. I feel like this is not one of my best voiceovers. I feel like I'm all over the place here, but we're moving into the final spread of this setup, which is going to be my expenses tracker and academic planner. So I am pasting in, or I guess just sticking in, my last artwork here. Whenever I was drawing it, you kind of saw it as a rectangle, but when I cut it out, I cut the top left and side corners, and then I cut around the whale with the scissors, but then I just took my fingers and like ripped the painting on either side to give it this very organic and like loose edge that looks like literal paper is ripping. But I like this effect because not only is it like organic like I mentioned, but the whale itself has a very distinct outline, so it's like the whale is popping out from the water that maybe just like splashed on the page, that kind of effect. I think it actually worked a lot better than I expected. I wasn't sure what to really expect with these two artworks. I knew the cover page was going to turn out well because it's just like a rectangle. It's pretty simple, but these two kind of have to like be measured and fit into each spread individually. So it's definitely like a little crossing my fingers, but I think this was one of my favorite things in this entire setup, was how the whale like pops out of the art here. I think it turned out really well. So like I said, on the left is going to be an expenses tracker, which is very simple. Done it before. It's just going to have all of my expenses along with the date and the amount, and I'll total the end at the end of the month. On the right, I'm bringing back my academic planner. I don't think I did this last month because it was December, so I was going to leave for break rather soon. However, like I mentioned, I'm going back to school in the middle of January, so I have about 2.5, maybe like 3 weeks of school in January that I definitely want to keep track of. I will not be using this spread until I go back to school. However, when I do, I want to keep track of all my classes and due dates. So this is basically a big chart. Each column is a different week, and then each row is a different class. So I'm taking 5 classes next semester, and I'm just gonna write down any due dates, projects, assignments, exams, quizzes, anything that I have here. And then as I make each weekly spread, I will then transfer those dates into the weekly spread so I can keep track of what I have to work on that specific week as far as getting all my, assignments turned in, all of my grades in check. I want to start this semester off on a very high note. You may have noticed that the actual bullet journal elements of each spread seems to be very, very minimal in this setup. Just black boxes, a little bit of blue, some dots around because I always add little sparkles and dots. But I feel like with a setup like this, the art was just so in your face, look at me, I'm the attention seeker here, that I feel like everything else in the spread can kind of take a back seat, It doesn't have to be super extra and detailed, it just has to be simple and useful. With that being said, here is the final flip through. I love, love, love this setup. I actually was super shocked with myself that I was able to come up with something that I really enjoyed, especially since I was stressing so much before, but I feel like we really accomplished something here. If you like this video and want to see more from me, definitely go subscribe below. I post bullet journal productivity videos every single week. All of these spreads will be available for digital download in line art form. So if you want to download this, check out the link in my description below, and you guys can twin with me for your bullet journal themes. Love you guys so much, and I'll see you in a few days.